Imagine walking into a luxury store, ready to shop, only to be kicked out for no reason at all. That's exactly what happened to this black woman when she visited a high-end boutique. She was treated with utter disrespect, made to feel like she didn't belong, simply because of who she was. But what happened next was something no one saw coming. The very next day, her billionaire husband, someone who's known for his influence and wealth, decided enough was enough. He wasn't about to let anyone mistreat his wife. What he did next was something that shook the entire store and its owners to their core. He used his power to send a clear message, one that would forever change the course of the store's future. But the question is, what exactly did he do? How did a simple shopping experience turn into a moment of justice and revenge? Stay tuned as we unravel the shocking aftermath of a luxury store that underestimated the wrong person. This story is about more than just an injustice. It's about standing up, making a statement, and showing the world that no one is above accountability. Don't go anywhere. The rest of this story is just getting started. The woman at the center of this story, let's call her Maya, had always been used to a certain level of success. As a respected entrepreneur, she had built her own empire, and luxury was part of her daily life. Still, nothing could prepare her for what she experienced that day. Walking into the boutique, she was immediately struck by the cold stares of the staff, who seemed to size her up as soon as she entered. She brushed it off, thinking maybe they were just having a bad day. But it didn't take long for things to escalate. As she wandered through the store looking for something special, the atmosphere shifted. A manager approached her, his tone condescending, questioning if she had the means to afford the items she was browsing. Maya was stunned, but before she could say anything, she was escorted out of the store like she was some kind of criminal. The humiliation was palpable, and all she could do was leave with her head held high, but her heart heavy. Now here's where it gets interesting. Maya wasn't alone. Her husband, Jared, had been hearing about the incident all night. He wasn't just any billionaire. He was a man known for his fierce loyalty and a reputation for protecting his family at all costs. But what Jared did next would turn this story from a personal injustice into something far bigger. That night, Jared couldn't sleep. Maya's hurt was his hurt. He paced their penthouse, replaying every detail of the story she'd shared with him. The more he thought about it, the more furious he became. It wasn't just about the humiliation she'd endured. It was about the sheer audacity of a store treating her that way. She was a successful woman, and not just any successful woman. But to them, she was invisible, except when they thought she didn't belong. He knew he couldn't let it slide, not without making a statement. The next morning, Jared made a call to his lawyer. He wasn't thinking about money. This wasn't about putting a price tag on the hurt. It was about standing up to the toxic culture that allowed people to be treated like second-class citizens based on their appearance. Jared wasn't just angry on behalf of his wife. He was angry on behalf of everyone who had ever been underestimated or mistreated. Meanwhile, back at the store, the staff had no idea what was coming. To them, it was just another day. The manager who had kicked Maya out felt justified, convinced he was just doing his job, following the rules. But behind the scenes, the store's owners had begun to hear rumors. A small part of them was nervous. They didn't know Jared, but they knew his name, and they knew what kind of power he held in the business world. Still, they dismissed the threat. After all, they were a luxury brand. People would always come back. Little did they know, Jared was about to disrupt everything they thought they knew about wealth, privilege, and power. The tension in the air was thick as Jared's plans unfolded. He had made his move, and now the ball was in the store's court. Word spread quickly through the luxury brand's high society circle. Maya and Jared weren't backing down. The owners, who had once dismissed the incident as a minor misstep, began to feel the heat. They were no longer dealing with just an upset customer. They were facing a storm, one they hadn't anticipated. Jared had done his research, reaching out to key people who knew how to push the right buttons in the business world. He wasn't just relying on his name. He was using it to expose the cracks in the system that allowed businesses like this one to discriminate. Behind closed doors, there was talk of media coverage, of social media outrage, and of the potential loss of reputation that could wipe out decades of carefully crafted luxury. As the day went on, the store's managers started to get nervous. They had seen customers come and go, but they had never experienced the kind of pressure they were facing now. Employees whispered in the back rooms, wondering if their jobs were on the line, while the higher-ups scrambled to contain the situation. The store's PR team was working overtime, drafting statements, trying to figure out how to spin this into something manageable. But they were too late. The damage was already done. Maya wasn't speaking to the press, not yet, but Jared was. And when he finally addressed the situation publicly, it was clear that things were about to get a whole lot worse for the boutique. His words were calm, measured, but the weight behind them was unmistakable. He wasn't just defending his wife. He was calling out an entire culture of exclusion and prejudice that had gone unnoticed for far too long. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about forcing change. As the story began to break wider, Maya and Jared could feel the storm building. But no one knew yet just how deep it was going to get. Just when it seemed like Jared's move would tip the scales, something unexpected happened. The store's owners, desperate to salvage their reputation, made a shocking counterattack. They released a statement claiming that Maya had caused a scene in the store, acting erratically and provoking the staff. The words were carefully chosen to paint her as unstable, even though there were multiple witnesses who could attest to the contrary. But the damage was done. Now the story was not just about a wealthy woman being mistreated. It was about her alleged behavior, and suddenly the narrative shifted. Jared was blindsided. He had expected backlash, but this wasn't just a smear campaign. It was an outright attack on his wife's character. The media was already buzzing with both sides of the story. Some people believed the boutique's version of events, while others saw through the attempt to discredit Maya. The public was divided, and what had once seemed like a clear-cut issue of privilege and injustice now had a layer of complexity that no one had anticipated. In the midst of the chaos, a surprising figure entered the fray, one of the boutique's former employees, someone who had worked there for years, but had recently left under mysterious circumstances. This former employee reached out to Maya, offering proof that the store's management had a long history of mistreating people of color. They had kept meticulous records, documented incidents, and were willing to go public with everything they knew. It was a game changer, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The question was, how far was Jared willing to go to clear his wife's name and take down the system that allowed such behavior to thrive? And how much more would he lose before it was all over? The pressure was mounting, and the tension was building to a breaking point. The day of reckoning arrived faster than anyone expected. Jared, armed with the former employee's evidence and a relentless determination, arranged a live press conference. It was time to set the record straight once and for all. As cameras flashed and reporters filled the room, he spoke with a calm authority that commanded attention. He didn't just deny the store's version of events, he obliterated it. The documents, the witnesses, and the testimony from former staff painted a clear picture of systemic racism and exclusion. The truth was undeniable. Jared's words were a force, and the impact was immediate. The luxury brand's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Social media erupted in outrage, and the hashtag Justice for Maya began trending worldwide. The store's reputation, built over decades, was unraveling in real time. And just when it seemed like victory was within their grasp, Jared revealed the final twist. He had already bought out a significant portion of the company's shares. With that power, he had the authority to not just expose the truth, but to dismantle the business from within. But the twist didn't end there. As the press conference concluded, a message popped up on Jared's phone. It was from Maya, and it left him stunned. She had made a decision he hadn't expected, one that would change everything. She had been offered a chance to take a seat on the board of directors for a new company aimed at promoting diversity and inclusion within the fashion industry. Instead of focusing on revenge, Maya wanted to build something better, something that would change the entire industry for good. The news hit hard, but in a way, it was perfect. Jared had fought for his wife, and he had won, but Maya, in her wisdom, had found a way to make the world better, not through destruction, but through creation. As the store's collapse began in real time, Jared realized that the true victory wasn't just about bringing down the luxury brand. It was about the new world they were about to build together. In the weeks that followed, the luxury brand that had once been a symbol of exclusivity and elitism was forced to confront the reality of its actions. Jared's acquisition gave him the power to change the course of its future, but it was Maya's decision that truly reshaped the narrative. By accepting the offer to lead a new, more inclusive fashion company, she became a beacon of hope for those who had been pushed aside by an industry that thrived on exclusivity. The media's attention shifted from the scandal to Maya's new venture, and soon other brands began following suit, reassessing their own practices and making efforts to promote diversity. Maya's leadership sent ripples throughout the fashion world, showing that true power doesn't always lie in revenge. It lies in the ability to create change from within. As for the store, its downfall was swift. Lawsuits piled up, and customers turned their backs. It wasn't just the loss of money, it was the loss of trust. Jared and Maya stood side by side, not only as a couple, but as pioneers for a new era in the fashion industry, one where respect, equality, and inclusivity were no longer optional. In the end, they didn't just win, they built a legacy.